The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the nondescript military mailroom like angry wasps trapped in a jar. Specialist Elena Diaz tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear as she sorted through the endless stream of packages and letters. Her nimble fingers worked with practiced efficiency, but her mind was elsewhere, calculating variables and patterns that had nothing to do with postal codes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. To the casual observer, Elena was just another cog in the military's vast administrative machine. 27 years old with a quiet demeanor, she moved through the mailroom with the kind of unremarkable competence that made her practically invisible. Her reports were flawless, her workspace immaculate, and she never caused trouble. The perfect soldier in an unglamorous post, one that most ambitious military personnel would consider a career dead end. Heads up! Mail's here! The booming voice of Staff Sergeant Mitchell broke through the monotonous hum of the sorting machines. He dropped a heavy sack onto Elena's already crowded desk, making no effort to hide his disdain for what he considered women's work. "Try not to break a nail, Diaz." Elena didn't bother responding. After 8 months at Forward Operating Base Garrison, she'd learned that engaging with Mitchell's casual sexism only encouraged him. Instead, she simply nodded and reached for the bag, her rolled-up sleeve revealing a small, intricate symbol tattooed on her inner wrist, a stylized communications tower with lightning bolts radiating outward. Mitchell snorted when he caught sight of the ink. "Nice tattoo, Diaz. Let me guess, some deep, meaningful reminder that even mailroom clerks are important to the mission?" His voice carried across the room, drawing snickers from 2 other soldiers sorting packages nearby. The mockery wasn't new. At first, they'd assumed it was a boyfriend's name or some sentimental design. When they discovered it was military-adjacent imagery, the teasing had evolved into something more pointed, accusations of overcompensation, of trying to make her administrative role seem more tactical than it was. Elena kept her expression neutral as she began methodically processing the new delivery. Her movements were deliberate, her focus seemingly unbroken despite the laughter that followed Mitchell's comment. But behind her calm exterior, a different calculus was running, one that had nothing to do with mail delivery schedules or package tracking. Every day for the past 8 months, Elena had maintained this careful facade. Wake at 0500, work out in the base gym when it was mostly empty, grab coffee and a protein bar, then spend 10 hours in the mailroom sorting, logging, and distributing correspondence for the hundreds of personnel stationed at FOB Garrison. Dinner alone with a book, then back to her quarters to sleep. Rinse and repeat. A life of careful, deliberate invisibility. What Staff Sergeant Mitchell and the others didn't know, what nobody at FOB Garrison knew, was that Specialist Elena Diaz hadn't always been a mailroom clerk. The communications tower tattoo wasn't some aspirational symbol or naive attempt to seem more important. It was a reminder of what she'd once been, and what she was still doing beneath the cover of tedious administrative work. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena finished processing the new delivery and glanced at her watch. 17 minutes until her scheduled break. 17 minutes until she could slip away to the small, unused supply closet at the back of the communications center, where a modified tablet was hidden behind a loose ventilation panel. 17 minutes until she could continue the real work that had brought her to this dusty, forgotten corner of the conflict zone. "Hey, Diaz," called Corporal Ramirez from across the room. "There's a package here for Lieutenant Braddock, but it feels weird. Kinda heavy on one side. You want to check it out?" Elena crossed the room, grateful for the distraction from Mitchell's continued smirking. She took the package from Ramirez, her trained fingers immediately detecting the uneven weight distribution. "I'll handle this one," she said quietly, adding it to her processing pile. Back at her desk, she carefully examined the package. The return address was legitimate, a military support organization that frequently sent care packages to deployed personnel. The postmarks and routing information were consistent with normal shipping channels. But something about the way the contents shifted when she rotated the box triggered her suspicion. "Taking that one home as a souvenir, Diaz?" "Quote," Mitchell called out, noticing her careful inspection. Or are you secretly screening for explosives with your magical mailroom powers? More laughter followed. Elena ignored him and made a notation on her log. The package would be misrouted to the security office for additional screening. Just another small action that nobody would connect to the larger pattern of her work. The real reason she'd requested assignment to this particular fob with its strategically important location near the border. As the designated break time approached, Elena organized her desk with methodical precision, nothing out of place, nothing to draw attention. She'd learned years ago that true invisibility didn't come from hiding. It came from being so ordinary that people's eyes simply slid past you, their brains registering nothing worth remembering. "Going for your usual coffee and brooding session, Diaz?" Mitchell asked as she stood to leave. "One of these days you should try actually talking to people. Might make you seem like less of a robot." "Maybe tomorrow," Elena replied, with a small, practiced smile that revealed nothing. The same response she gave every day. The same non-committal pleasantry that maintained the carefully constructed wall between her and the rest of the base personnel. As she walked across the compound toward the communications center, Elena kept her pace measured and her posture relaxed. Not too fast to suggest urgency, not too slow to suggest aimlessness, just another soldier taking a break, invisible in her ordinariness. The communications center was buzzing with activity as usual. Technicians monitoring various frequencies, intelligence analysts poring over reports, communications officers coordinating with other bases in the region. Elena nodded to the duty officer as she passed through, heading toward the small kitchenette area where coffee was available around the clock. "Diaz," acknowledged Captain Lewis with a distracted nod. Like most officers on base, he recognized her face but knew little else about her, exactly as she preferred it. With practiced movements, Elena filled a paper cup with coffee, added precisely 1 packet of sugar, and stirred it slowly. Her eyes casually scanned the room, noting who was present, what stations were occupied, what conversations were happening. Then, cup in hand, she drifted toward the back hallway, where the supply closets were located. The unused closet was exactly as she'd left it yesterday, door slightly ajar, interior dark, and apparently untouched. Elena slipped inside, closed the door behind her, and set her coffee on a dusty shelf. Working by feel in the darkness, she located the loose ventilation panel and retrieved the modified tablet. The device powered on silently, its screen dimmed to minimal brightness. Elena entered a complex 16-character password, followed by a biometric scan of her iris. The home screen appeared, displaying a specialized application unlike anything found on standard military equipment. This was her real work. The reason a decorated signals intelligence specialist with advanced cryptanalytic training was spending her days sorting mail in a forgotten corner of the conflict zone. For the past 8 months, Elena had been intercepting and decoding enemy communications, identifying patterns that conventional military intelligence had missed. The enemy had adapted their communications methods, abandoning traditional radio frequencies for a complex system of rotating encryption protocols transmitted through civilian networks. Standard military monitoring had failed to detect the pattern, but Elena, with her unique combination of mathematical insight and intuitive pattern recognition, had not only identified it but developed a method to intercept and decode it. Her fingers flew across the screen, inputting the data she'd gathered from seemingly innocuous sources throughout the base: shipping manifests, supply requests, routine communications that contained hidden markers invisible to anyone who wasn't specifically looking for them. The algorithm she'd developed processed the information, extracting the encrypted enemy communications embedded within ordinary data streams. A series of decoded messages appeared on the screen. Elena's pulse quickened as she scanned the content. Coordinates, timeline, personnel numbers. The enemy was planning something significant, and soon. She quickly transferred the decoded intelligence to an encrypted file, then wiped all traces of her activity from the tablet's active memory. Just as she was replacing the device behind the ventilation panel, the closet door swung open. Elena froze, her back to the doorway, heart hammering against her ribs. "Diaz? What the hell are you doing in here?" Staff Sergeant Mitchell's voice was sharp with suspicion. Elena turned slowly, her expression carefully neutral. "Looking for spare toner cartridges, Sergeant. The mailroom printer is almost empty." The lie came easily, her voice betraying none of the adrenaline surging through her system. Mitchell's eyes narrowed as he took in the darkened closet, the untouched coffee on the shelf, Elena's position near the wall. In the dark? And since when does the mailroom use the comm center supply closet? Power's out in this section, Elena replied smoothly. And supply said they were out of our cartridge model. Suggested I check here. She gestured to the shelves. No luck, though. Mitchell stepped closer, his bulk filling the doorway. You know what I think, Diaz? I think you're up to something. Always keeping to yourself, always watching everyone. That little communications tower tattoo. His voice dropped lower. Playing soldier while pushing papers. Elena maintained eye contact, her posture relaxed despite the danger. Just doing my job, Sergeant. Nothing more. We'll see about that, Mitchell said, stepping back to let her pass. I'm keeping an eye on you, Diaz. Something's not right, and I'm going to figure out what it is. Elena nodded acknowledgement and walked past him, careful to maintain her unhurried pace despite the urgent intelligence burning in her mind. She needed to get this information to her handler, but Mitchell's suspicion had just made everything more complicated. Back in the mailroom, Elena resumed her sorting duties, her movements automatic while her mind raced through contingency plans. Mitchell had positioned himself at a desk with clear sightlines to her workspace, his attention no longer disguised by casual mockery. He was watching her openly now, looking for any behavior that might confirm his suspicions. The intelligence she'd uncovered couldn't wait. If her analysis was correct, the enemy was planning a major offensive within the next 72 hours, an attack that would target not just military installations but civilian infrastructure as well. Thousands of lives were potentially at stake. Elena continued processing mail, her external calm masking the rapid calculations happening beneath the surface. She needed a diversion, something that would draw attention away long enough for her to transmit the intelligence through her secure channel. As if answering her unspoken need, an alarm suddenly blared across the base. Attention all personnel, the PA system crackled. This is not a drill. Security breach at the north perimeter. All non-essential personnel report to designated shelter areas immediately. The mailroom erupted into controlled chaos as soldiers secured sensitive materials and prepared to move to their assigned positions. Elena quickly locked her workstation and joined the flow of personnel heading toward the nearest shelter. In the confusion, she slipped away from the group, moving instead toward the communications center where her handler would be monitoring emergency channels. The intel had to get through, regardless of the risk to her cover. As she rounded the corner of the administrative building, a hand shot out from a shadowed alcove, gripping her arm with bruising force. Mitchell's face loomed close to hers, his expression twisted with accusation. I knew it, he hissed. Everyone else heading to shelter, but you're going the opposite direction. What are you really doing here, Diaz? Who are you working for? Elena assessed her options in milliseconds. Mitchell outweighed her by at least 80 pounds. Direct confrontation wasn't viable. Attempting to explain would only deepen his suspicion. That left only one option, the truth, or at least part of it. I need to get to the comm center, she said, her voice low and urgent. I have intelligence about an imminent attack. People will die if this doesn't get through. Mitchell's grip tightened. Bullshit. You're a mail clerk. What intelligence could you possibly have? The communications tower tattoo isn't decorative, Mitchell, Elena said, meeting his gaze steadily. It's a designation. I'm SIGINT, deep cover. That package you saw me examine earlier. It contained embedded data about enemy movements. I need to get this to command now. For a moment, Mitchell's expression wavered between disbelief and uncertainty. Then his face hardened again. Nice story. Let's see what Colonel Blackwood has to say about it. Before Elena could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered as an explosion rocked the north perimeter. The security breach wasn't a drill or a coincidence. It was the beginning of the attack she'd been trying to warn about. That's them, she said urgently. The intelligence I gathered shows they're targeting the command center next. We have less than 10 minutes before the second wave hits. Another explosion, closer this time, sent dust raining down from the nearby buildings. Mitchell's grip on her arm loosened slightly as he looked toward the source of the blast. If you're lying, he began. I'm not, Elena cut him off. But every second you keep me here puts more lives at risk. Mitchell released her arm, indecision clear on his face. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Together they sprinted toward the communications center, ducking as a third explosion sent shrapnel flying across the compound. The center was a flurry of activity when they arrived, officers and analysts responding to the attack while trying to coordinate defensive measures. Elena pushed through the chaos toward Major Hawkins, her handler disguised as the base's senior communications officer. "Sir," she called, catching his attention. "I have the intel on the attack pattern." Hawkins's eyes widened slightly at seeing her approach so openly, but he quickly masked his surprise. "Report, Specialist." As Mitchell watched in growing astonishment, Elena delivered a detailed analysis of the enemy's attack plan, complete with projected targets, timeline, and tactical objectives. She pulled the small tablet from inside her uniform jacket and handed it to Hawkins, who immediately connected it to the command system. "My God," breathed one of the intelligence officers as Elena's data populated the tactical display. "They're hitting in a synchronized pattern. Command center is next, followed by the barracks and then the medical facility." "Evacuate command now," Hawkins ordered, already moving toward the communications array. "Redirect defensive resources to protect the barracks and medical. And get me a secure line to Central Command." As the room erupted into coordinated activity, Mitchell stared at Elena with new eyes. "You're really not a mail clerk," he said, his earlier mockery replaced by grudging respect. "I am a mail clerk," Elena replied, her attention focused on updating the tactical display with new information. "That's my cover. But the mailroom gives me access to every piece of physical correspondence that comes through this base. You'd be amazed what people hide in ordinary letters and packages when they think no one is looking closely enough." Before Mitchell could respond, Colonel Blackwood strode into the communications center, his weathered face grim as he surveyed the tactical situation. "Major Hawkins," he barked. "Situation report." "Sir," Hawkins responded crisply, "we have credible intelligence on the enemy's full attack pattern. Specialist Diaz has been tracking their communications and identified their strategy. We've already begun countermeasures." Blackwood's sharp gaze landed on Elena, recognition flickering in his eyes. Unlike the rest of the base personnel, the colonel knew exactly who Elena Diaz was and why she'd been assigned to Fob Garrison. "Specialist," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "It seems your cover assignment has paid off." "Yes, sir," Elena replied, aware of Mitchell's growing confusion beside her. As if sensing the staff sergeant's bewilderment, Blackwood turned to him. "Sergeant Mitchell, what you are witnessing is classified at the highest level. Specialist Diaz is part of a special intelligence unit that operates beneath conventional military structure. Her presence here is known only to myself and Major Hawkins." Mitchell's face flushed with embarrassment as he recalled the months of mockery he'd directed at Elena. "Sir, I didn't—" "That's the point, Sergeant." Blackwood cut him off. "You weren't supposed to know. None of you were. That's how deep cover works." Another explosion rocked the building, closer than the previous ones. Blackwood turned back to the tactical display, where Elena's intelligence was already helping coordinate the base's defensive response. "Sir," Elena said urgently, "there's more. The communications tower tattoo that everyone's been mocking me for, it's not just a unit designation. It's a warning." She pulled up a satellite image on the main display, indicating a small ridge approximately 2 kilometers from the base perimeter. "Their main communications array is positioned here. It's controlling the synchronized attack. If we can take it out, their assault will lose coordination." Blackwood studied the image, then nodded sharply. "Major Hawkins, get me a strike team ready in 5 minutes. Specialist Diaz, you're with them. You know what to look for." As the communications center mobilized around them, Mitchell found himself standing beside Elena, his earlier suspicion transformed into something approaching respect. "The tattoo," he said quietly. "It wasn't just for show." Elena rolled up her sleeve, revealing the full design of the communications tower with its radiating lightning bolts. "This is the symbol of the Signals Intelligence Special Operations Group. We intercept and disrupt enemy communications networks." "And no, Sergeant Mitchell, it wasn't for show." She turned to join the strike team assembling near the door, but Mitchell caught her arm, gently this time. "Diaz," he said, struggling to find the right words, "I'm sorry about the jokes." About everything. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then offered a small, genuine smile, the first he'd ever seen from her. Invisibility was the point, Sergeant. You weren't supposed to take me seriously. That's what made the cover work. As she turned to leave, Mitchell called after her. That communications tower you're targeting? You think you can really find it? Elena glanced back, her eyes suddenly alive with a fierce intelligence that Mitchell had never noticed before. Finding hidden signals is what I do, Sergeant. It's what I've always done. She joined the strike team at the door, her posture no longer that of the quiet mailroom clerk, but of the skilled intelligence operative she truly was. As they moved out toward the waiting vehicles, Elena felt the weight of her dual identity shifting. The careful anonymity she'd maintained for 8 months was falling away, replaced by the urgency of the mission and the lives depending on her specialized skills. The communications tower tattoo that had made her a target for jokes would now help save the base she'd been quietly protecting all along. And as the strike team vehicle sped toward the ridge where the enemy awaited, Elena Diaz prepared to show exactly why underestimating someone based on appearances was not just foolish, it could be deadly. The strike team vehicle thundered across the rough terrain, each jolt and bump reminding Elena of how different this moment was from her quiet days in the mailroom. The setting sun cast long shadows across the landscape, turning the world into a patchwork of amber light and deepening darkness. Perfect conditions for their mission, enough light to navigate, enough shadow to conceal their approach. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sergeant Willis, the strike team leader, glanced back from the front seat to where Elena sat studying a specialized tablet. ETA 3 minutes, specialist. You ready to show us what you can do? The 4 other members of the team, all elite tactical operators, watched her with barely concealed curiosity. To them, she had materialized from nowhere. A mailroom clerk suddenly revealed to be something else entirely. Targets should be just beyond the next ridge, Elena replied, her eyes never leaving the screen where signal strength indicators pulsed with increasing intensity. They're using a mobile array, vehicle-mounted, probably disguised as standard transport. Look for anomalies. Unusual antenna configurations, power generators, anything that doesn't match typical enemy deployment patterns. Willis nodded, impressed despite himself. You heard her. Jenkins, Barrett. You're on perimeter security once we locate the target. Diaz stays with me and Rodriguez. We'll need to identify and neutralize the communications hub without destroying the intelligence it contains. The vehicle slowed as they approached the ridge, engine dropping to a low rumble as the driver navigated through a narrow ravine that would shield their approach from enemy observation posts. Elena felt the familiar calm settling over her, the mental clarity that had made her so effective in her previous role before the deep cover assignment. Stop here, she said suddenly, eyes locked on her tablet. Signal strength indicates we're within 200 meters. We go on foot from this point. The team disembarked silently, weapons ready, moving with the practiced efficiency that came from countless high-risk operations. Elena adjusted her tactical vest, a far cry from the mailroom uniform she'd worn just hours earlier, and checked the specialized equipment she'd retrieved from Major Hawkins' secure locker before departure. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Stay behind me, Willis instructed as they began their approach. Elena shook her head. With respect, Sergeant, I need to be on point for this. The equipment I'm carrying can detect their transmission frequencies, but only at close range. I can pinpoint the exact location, but I need to lead. Willis hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with putting a specialist he still thought of as administrative staff in the most vulnerable position. Diaz, no offense, but Sergeant, Elena cut him off quietly. I've done this before, many times. This isn't my first field operation. It's just the first one you've seen me on. Something in her tone, the absolute certainty, the calm competence, made Willis reassess the woman standing before him. He nodded once. Take point. Rodriguez on your 6, I'll cover the left flank. Standard signals, minimum verbal communication. Elena moved forward, her steps silent despite the rough terrain. The tablet in her hand was specially modified to detect and analyze electromagnetic emissions, with minimal power signature of its own. technology that wasn't supposed to exist yet, developed by the same classified unit that had trained her. As they crested a small rise, Elena raised her fist in the standard signal to halt. Ahead, partially concealed in a natural depression, sat what appeared to be 2 standard enemy transport vehicles. But Elena's trained eye immediately spotted the inconsistencies. The slight bulge in one vehicle's roof tarp that suggested concealed equipment, the positioning of the vehicles to optimize signal transmission rather than defensive posture, the absence of standard security patrols that would accompany a typical transport. She pointed out the anomalies to Willis in hand signals, then indicated her plan of approach. The sergeant nodded approval, impressed by her tactical assessment. Moving from shadow to shadow, Elena led the small team on a circuitous approach that kept them concealed from the enemy position. Her tablet confirmed what her instincts had already told her. The seemingly innocent transport vehicles housed a sophisticated communications array that was coordinating the attack on Fob Garrison. When they reached the final approach, close enough to hear voices from the enemy position, Elena motioned the team to hold position while she made a final signal analysis. The attack on the base was intensifying. She could tell from the increased transmission activity that the enemy was in the middle of coordinating their second wave. Willis leaned close, his voice barely a whisper. "Assessment? 6 hostiles," Elena murmured, eyes still on her equipment. 2 in the primary communications vehicle, 1 on watch, 3 in the secondary support vehicle. The primary target is the northeastern vehicle. That's where the signal originates. We need to neutralize the operators without damaging the equipment. Willis gestured to Rodriguez and Barrett, indicating their targets and approach vectors. To Elena, he signaled, "You stay back until we secure the position." Elena shook her head firmly. "The communication system will have fail-safes. If I'm not there immediately when you breach, they'll destroy the intelligence. I need to be first through that door, Sergeant." Willis looked like he wanted to argue, but there was no time. The attack on the base was proceeding, and every minute they delayed meant more lives at risk. He gave a terse nod, then signaled the team to move into final position. The strike happened with the synchronized precision of elite operators. Rodriguez and Barrett took out the perimeter guards silently, while Jenkins covered the secondary vehicle. Willis and Elena approached the main communications transport, moving in perfect tandem despite never having trained together. At Willis's signal, Elena moved. The door to the communications vehicle burst open under her precise kick, and she was inside before the 2 operators could react. Her first shot neutralized the hostile nearest the equipment, a precision round to the shoulder that incapacitated without killing. The second operator reached for a fail-safe switch on the console, but Elena was faster, her follow-up strike leaving him unconscious before his hand found its target. "Clear," she called, already moving to the communications array. Willis secured the room behind her, checking the downed hostiles and binding their wounds while maintaining watchful cover. "What exactly are we looking at, Diaz?" he asked, as Elena's fingers flew over the enemy equipment, bypassing security measures and accessing core systems with practiced ease. "It's a distributed command network," she explained, eyes never leaving the screens. "They're using civilian communications infrastructure as cover for military transmissions. The attack on the base isn't just about taking out a military target. It's a test run for a new coordination system that could revolutionize their entire approach to warfare." Elena connected her specialized equipment to the enemy system, initiating a complete data capture while simultaneously working to disrupt the ongoing attack coordination. "I need 3 minutes to download their command protocols and plant the countermeasures. Then we can destroy the physical equipment." Willis nodded, relaying the situation to the rest of the team via tactical radio. Outside, the sounds of combat suggested that the remaining enemy personnel had been engaged by Rodriguez and the others. Elena worked with focused intensity, her fingers dancing across keyboards and interfaces with the speed and precision that had once made her the top signals intelligence specialist in her unit. This was who she truly was. Not the quiet mailroom clerk who kept her head down and avoided attention, but a highly trained operative who could read digital battlefields like others read physical terrain. "Time check," Willis prompted after what seemed like an eternity of tense silence. 30 seconds, Elena replied without looking up. "I've got their full attack plan, communication protocols, and—" She paused, eyes widening slightly as new data flowed across her screen. "This is bigger than we thought, Sergeant. The attack on Fob Garrison is just a diversion. They're planning something much larger, a coordinated strike against 3 civilian targets within the next 24 hours. Willis moved closer, scanning the intelligence now displayed on Elena's screen. Jesus, he breathed. If they pull this off, they won't, Elena said firmly, disconnecting her equipment and initiating the final sequence that would corrupt the enemy's command network. We have their playbook now, and I've just inserted a virus into their communication system that will cascade through their entire network, disrupting command and control for all connected units. She stepped back from the console as it began to spark and smoke, the virus systematically destroying the hardware after extracting all valuable intelligence. Mission accomplished, Sergeant. Let's get this intel back to base. Outside, the rest of the team had secured the area, neutralizing the remaining enemy personnel with minimal casualties. Elena noticed Rodriguez looking at her with new respect as she emerged from the communications vehicle, specialized equipment secured, and intelligence data safely stored. Didn't expect that from the mailroom girl, he said, no mockery in his tone, only genuine admiration. Elena smiled slightly, the adrenaline of successful mission completion still coursing through her system. There's a reason I have this, she replied, briefly touching the communications tower tattoo on her wrist. It's not just ink. The ride back to Fob Garrison was tense but triumphant. Elena used the time to begin preliminary analysis of the captured intelligence, identifying key elements that would require immediate action once they returned. The base came into view just as full darkness fell, the perimeter lights illuminating a scene of controlled chaos as personnel worked to manage the aftermath of the attack. The damage was less severe than it could have been. Thanks to Elena's early warning, defensive measures had been deployed that minimized casualties and protected critical infrastructure. As their vehicle passed through the reinforced gates, Elena could see medical teams treating the wounded and engineering crews already beginning repairs on damaged buildings. Colonel Blackwood was waiting when they arrived at the command center, his expression grave but determined. Report, he ordered as soon as Elena entered, dispensing with formalities in favor of immediate intelligence assessment. For the next hour, Elena briefed the colonel and his senior staff on what she'd discovered, both from her months of covert monitoring and from the captured enemy communications array. The full picture was alarming. A sophisticated enemy network that had evolved to exploit weaknesses in conventional military intelligence gathering, using civilian infrastructure as cover for military operations. The attack today was essentially a field test, Elena explained, displaying captured data on the command center's main screen. They were evaluating their command and control systems against a hardened military target before proceeding to their primary objectives. These civilian centers here, and here. She indicated 3 locations on the digital map. Casualties would have been in the thousands, Major Hawkins murmured, studying the projected attack patterns. And conventional intelligence would never have detected it in time, added Blackwood, the implications clear in his voice. Because we're not set up to monitor civilian communications channels for military transmissions, not on this scale. That's why I was assigned here, sir, Elena said quietly. My unit specializes in identifying exactly these kinds of hybrid threats, ones that exist in the spaces between conventional military and civilian domains. The colonel turned to the assembled officers, his decision already made. I want strike teams prepped and ready to move on these locations within the hour. Major Hawkins, coordinate with Central Command. We need to neutralize these threats before they can reorganize. As the command center erupted into focused activity, Blackwood drew Elena aside. Specialist Diaz, I owe you an apology. Elena looked at him, genuinely surprised. Sir? When Central Command assigned you here, I questioned the necessity. Thought it was bureaucratic overreach, allocating a specialist of your caliber to monitor what I considered a low-priority base. He shook his head ruefully. I was wrong. Your work here has saved countless lives today. Thank you, sir, Elena replied, uncomfortable with the praise but recognizing the significance of a colonel acknowledging his error to a specialist. The question now, Blackwood continued, is what happens next? Your cover is effectively blown. Everyone on this base will know by morning that you're not just a mailroom clerk. The reality of this statement hit Elena with unexpected force. For 8 months, she had maintained her carefully constructed identity, finding a certain peace in the anonymity of administrative work even as she conducted her covert monitoring. That life was now irrevocably changed. "I'll contact Central Command for reassignment," she said, already mentally preparing for the transition. "Once we've neutralized the remaining threats, there's no reason for me to—" Actually, Blackwood interrupted. "I've already spoken with your commanding officer at SIGINT Special Operations. Given what we now know about the enemy's use of civilian infrastructure for military communications, your expertise is more valuable here than ever, but not hidden in the mailroom." Elena waited, uncertain where this was leading. "I'm establishing a new signals intelligence unit here at FOB Garrison," the colonel explained, "dedicated to monitoring and interdicting exactly the kind of hybrid threat you've identified. I want you to lead it, Diaz. Full operational authority, staff of your choosing, direct reporting line to me." The offer was unexpected, a significant promotion and acknowledgement of her capabilities beyond anything Elena had anticipated when she accepted the deep cover assignment. It meant stepping fully into the light, abandoning the protective anonymity she'd grown accustomed to. But it also meant doing the work she was born to do, without pretense or limitation. "I'll need specialized equipment, sir, and personnel with very specific skill sets." Blackwood smiled slightly, recognizing her acceptance in the practical response. "You'll have whatever you need, Sergeant Diaz." Elena blinked at the sudden promotion. "Sergeant, sir." "Effective immediately. The paperwork will catch up eventually." He extended his hand. "Congratulations, Sergeant. I look forward to seeing what you can accomplish when you're not hiding your capabilities." As Blackwood returned to the central command table, Elena found herself momentarily alone, processing the rapid changes that had transformed her life in the span of a few hours. From mockery to respect, from hiding to recognition, from solitude to leadership. The door to the command center opened, and Staff Sergeant Mitchell entered, his expression a complex mixture of embarrassment, respect, and contrition. He approached Elena hesitantly, clearly struggling to reconcile the quiet mailroom clerk he'd tormented with the skilled operative who had just saved the base. "Diaz," he began awkwardly, "I just wanted to say, that is, I never thought—" "It's fine, Mitchell," Elena said, surprising herself with the genuine absence of resentment. "You weren't supposed to know. That was the point." "Still," he persisted, "the things I said about your tattoo, about you just being a clerk, I was wrong. And I'm sorry." Elena glanced down at the communications tower inked on her wrist, the symbol that had drawn so much mockery and now stood revealed as a badge of elite service. "The tattoo served its purpose," she said. "It identified me to those who needed to know, while seeming meaningless to everyone else." Mitchell nodded slowly. "Smart. Really smart." He hesitated, then added, "Word is, you're setting up a new unit. That true?" "News travels fast," Elena observed with a slight smile. "It's a small base," Mitchell shrugged. "And you just went from invisible to the center of attention in about 3 hours flat." There was truth in his assessment. Elena could feel the weight of curious glances from others in the command center, could sense the way the story was already spreading through the base. The mailroom clerk with the mysterious tattoo who had saved them all from a devastating attack. "I'm building a team," she confirmed. "Signals intelligence, communications monitoring, digital interdiction. It's specialized work." Mitchell straightened slightly. "I have a background in communications before I transferred to logistics. Not special operations level, but I know my way around a comm system. If you're looking for personnel—" He left the offer hanging, clearly prepared for rejection. Elena studied him thoughtfully. The man who had mocked her for months was now standing before her, offering to serve under her command. There was a certain poetic justice to it, but her decision would be based on capability, not sentiment. "Report to the communications center at 0800 tomorrow," she said finally. "I'll have Major Hawkins pull your service record and evaluate your qualifications. If you have the skills we need, Your history of poor judgment regarding mailroom personnel won't disqualify you." The ghost of a smile softened her words, letting Mitchell know that while she hadn't forgotten the mockery, she wasn't going to hold it against him indefinitely. He nodded, recognizing both the opportunity and the subtle warning it contained. "08, 00, I'll be there." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Diaz?" "Sergeant Diaz. I think that tattoo is pretty badass now that I know what it actually means." After he left, Elena returned to the central command table, where plans were being finalized for the counterstrike against the remaining enemy targets. As she took her place among the senior officers, no longer hidden, no longer pretending to be less than she was, she felt a sense of resolution that had been missing during her months of deep cover. The communications tower tattoo that had made her a target for jokes was now a symbol recognized and respected throughout the base. The skills she had hidden were now acknowledged and valued. The isolation she had maintained as part of her cover was giving way to connection and leadership. As Colonel Blackwood outlined the final operations plan, incorporating Elena's intelligence and expertise into every aspect, she realized that sometimes being seen, truly seen, for who you are, was more powerful than any cover identity could ever be. The mockery had ended not because she had hidden more effectively, but because she had finally revealed her true capabilities when it mattered most. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: building her team, establishing the new intelligence unit, tracking down the remaining enemy networks. But for the first time since arriving at Fob Garrison, Elena Diaz wouldn't face those challenges alone or in disguise. She would meet them as herself, Sergeant Diaz of the Signals Intelligence Special Operations Group, the woman with the communications tower tattoo that wasn't just ink, but a symbol of extraordinary capability that had been hiding in plain sight all along. Dawn broke over Fob Garrison with streaks of amber and gold painting the sky, nature's indifference to the previous day's violence rendered in breathtaking color. Elena stood at the window of her new office in the communications center, watching the base come alive with morning activity. 3 days had passed since the attack, and already the rhythms of military life had adjusted to incorporate this new reality and her new role within it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The door opened behind her, and Major Hawkins entered with a stack of personnel files. "Your candidates, Sergeant," he said, placing them on her desk. 15 soldiers with communications or intelligence backgrounds, all currently stationed here. I've ranked them according to relevant skills and experience. Elena turned from the window, the early light catching the silver sergeant stripes newly affixed to her uniform. The transition from anonymous mailroom clerk to unit commander had happened with dizzying speed, each hour bringing new responsibilities and decisions. "Thank you, Major," she replied, moving to review the files. "And the specialized equipment request?" "Approved at the highest levels," Hawkins confirmed with a slight smile. "Whatever you did out there at the enemy communications hub made quite an impression. Central Command is giving you priority clearance for anything you need." Elena nodded, grateful but unsurprised. The intelligence she'd captured had revealed a threat far beyond what anyone had anticipated, an enemy evolving faster than conventional military structure could respond to. Her new unit represented an acknowledgement that traditional approaches were insufficient against this hybrid threat. "Mitchell's file is in there," Hawkins added, nodding toward the stack. Surprisingly solid background in communications before his transfer to logistics. Not top tier, but solid fundamentals. Elena raised an eyebrow. "You sound skeptical, Major." "Just concerned about potential friction given your history," Hawkins replied diplomatically. "The man spent months mocking you, Diaz. Now he'd be under your direct command." Elena considered this as she flipped open Mitchell's file, scanning his qualifications with a critical eye. "Sometimes the greatest respect comes from those who once underestimated you," she said finally. "I'm more interested in capability than comfort. If he can do the job, his past behavior is irrelevant." "Your call," Hawkins conceded. "Team briefing is scheduled for 1,100 hours in the secure conference room. Colonel Blackwood wants an operational plan by end of day." After he left, Elena immersed herself in the personnel files, evaluating each candidate against the specialized requirements of her new unit. The work required a unique combination of technical expertise and intuitive pattern recognition, the ability to see connections where conventional analysis saw only noise. Not everyone with a communications background would have the right mindset. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. At precisely 0800, a knock came at her door. Staff Sergeant Mitchell stood in the hallway, his uniform impeccable, his expression a carefully maintained professional neutrality. Gone was the sneering mockery that had characterized their previous interactions, replaced by a wary respect that Elena found more genuine than any forced apology. "Reporting as ordered, Sergeant Diaz," he said formally. Elena gestured him inside. "Close the door, Mitchell. Let's talk about your qualifications." For the next 30 minutes, she conducted a thorough interview, probing his technical knowledge and problem-solving approach with the kind of specific questions that revealed capability beyond what appeared on paper. Mitchell responded with increasing confidence, his initial discomfort giving way to enthusiasm as the conversation turned to technical challenges he'd overcome in previous assignments. "You understand I'm building something entirely new here," Elena said finally, leaning back in her chair. "This isn't conventional signals intelligence. We're looking for enemy communications hidden within civilian data streams, patterns that exist in the spaces between established monitoring protocols." Mitchell nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's why you were in the mailroom," he said, the realization dawning. "Physical mail is one of the few communication channels not subject to routine digital monitoring." Elena felt a flicker of approval at his insight. "Exactly. The enemy has adapted to our standard surveillance methods. They're using hybrid approaches, combining old-school techniques with cutting-edge technology. To counter that, we need to think differently." She stood, moving to the tactical map displayed on her wall, a specialized visualization showing information flows rather than physical terrain. "I need people who can see patterns in chaos, who understand that sometimes the absence of signal is more significant than its presence." Mitchell studied the map, his eyes tracking the data flows with genuine interest. "And you think I might be one of those people?" "I think you have potential," Elena replied honestly. "Whether you can fulfill it remains to be seen." She returned to her desk, decision made. "Report to the secure conference room at 1100 hours. You'll be joining the initial team briefing as a probationary member. Your permanent assignment depends on your performance over the next 2 weeks." The surprise and gratitude in Mitchell's expression was unmistakable. "Thank you for the opportunity, Sergeant. I won't let you down." "See that you don't," Elena replied, then added with the ghost of a smile. "And Mitchell? The next time you see a tattoo you don't understand, consider the possibility that your ignorance isn't a reflection of someone else's value." By 1100 hours, the secure conference room was filled with the 8 soldiers Elena had selected from the candidate pool. They represented a diverse cross-section of the base's personnel, communications specialists, intelligence analysts, and even a logistics officer whose background in supply chain modeling offered unique insights into pattern recognition. Mitchell sat slightly apart from the others, his probationary status evident in his posture if not explicitly stated. Elena entered last, followed by Colonel Blackwood and Major Hawkins. The room snapped to attention, the atmosphere charged with curiosity and anticipation. These soldiers had been summoned without explanation, knowing only that they'd been selected for a new specialized unit under the command of the former mailroom clerk who had saved the base. "At ease," Blackwood ordered, then gestured to Elena. "Sergeant Diaz will brief you on your new assignment." Elena moved to the front of the room, activating the specialized display that showed the same information flows visible in her office. For the next 20 minutes, she outlined the threat they faced, an enemy that had evolved beyond conventional military structure, using civilian infrastructure as cover for military operations, and developing communication methods that existing intelligence couldn't reliably detect. 3 days ago, she continued, we neutralized a communications hub coordinating an attack on this base. The intelligence we captured revealed a larger network, one that spans multiple regions and uses methods we're only beginning to understand. She brought up images of the captured equipment, highlighting the specialized components that allowed the enemy to hide military transmissions within civilian data streams. Our mission is to identify and neutralize this network before they can execute the larger operation we've detected. To do that, we need to think differently about signals intelligence. Elena touched her wrist, drawing attention to the communications tower tattoo that had once been the subject of mockery. This symbol represents the Signals Intelligence Special Operations Group, a unit that specializes in detecting what others miss. As of today, you are all part of a new detachment of that group, operating under my command. She could see the shift in their expressions, surprise giving way to pride, uncertainty transforming into resolve. These soldiers had been chosen not just for their technical skills, but for their adaptability, their willingness to embrace unconventional approaches. The enemy believes that by hiding their communications in plain sight, dispersed across civilian channels, fragmented across multiple platforms, they've become invisible to conventional military intelligence. Elena continued. Our job is to prove them wrong. For the next hour, she detailed their operational approach, a hybrid methodology that combined traditional signals intelligence with innovative pattern recognition techniques. Each team member would be responsible for monitoring specific communication channels, looking for the subtle markers that indicated enemy activity hidden within normal civilian traffic. Questions? Elena asked, concluding the formal briefing. A communications specialist named Rivera raised her hand. Sergeant, with respect, how did you identify the enemy's communication method in the first place, if it was designed to evade conventional detection? I recognized something familiar in an unfamiliar context, Elena replied. During my previous operations with SIGINT Special Ops, we encountered similar techniques on a smaller scale. The key was looking for patterns not in what was present, but in what was absent, the negative spaces in the data flow where something should have been but wasn't. She brought up a visualization that demonstrated the concept, areas in the normal communication patterns that showed subtle distortions, tiny irregularities that most analysis would dismiss as background noise. The enemy is creating micro-disruptions in civilian data streams, using those disruptions to encode their own communications. To conventional monitoring, it looks like random fluctuation. To us, it's a signal. Understanding dawned in their expressions, followed by the kind of intellectual excitement that came with encountering a genuinely new challenge. These were soldiers who had joined the military's technical branches because they enjoyed solving complex problems, and Elena was offering them one of the most interesting problems they'd ever encountered. We start immediately, she concluded. You'll be divided into monitoring teams, each focused on specific communication channels. Major Hawkins will handle your administrative reassignment. Dismissed, except for Mitchell. A word, please. As the others filed out, Mitchell remained seated, his expression carefully neutral, but tension evident in his posture. Elena waited until the room was empty before speaking. You had questions during the briefing, she observed. I could see it in your face. Why didn't you ask them? Quote. Mitchell hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Didn't want to challenge your authority in front of the others. Given our history. In this unit, questions aren't challenges. They're essential, Elena replied firmly. I need people who think critically, who question assumptions, including mine. Especially mine. She leaned forward, meeting his gaze directly. So ask now. The methodology you described, Mitchell began, his professional interest overcoming his personal discomfort. It requires monitoring massive amounts of civilian data traffic. Even with the specialized equipment you've requested, that's like searching for a specific drop of water in a flowing river. Elena nodded, acknowledging the validity of his concern. Which is why we need to narrow the parameters. Your first assignment is to develop filtering algorithms that can identify the specific types of micro-disruptions we're looking for. Your background in communications infrastructure gives you a foundation to build on. Mitchell's eyes widened slightly at the responsibility implied in the assignment. You're trusting me with developing core analytical tools for the unit? I'm giving you an opportunity to prove your capabilities, Elena corrected. Whether that trust is warranted depends entirely on your results. The challenge hung in the air between them, not a punishment or rebuke for past behavior, but a genuine opportunity to demonstrate value. Mitchell recognized it for what it was and nodded slowly. I'll start immediately. Thank you, Sergeant. As he left, Elena felt a moment of quiet satisfaction. Building this team was about more than assembling technical skills. It was about creating a unit culture that valued perception, insight, and adaptability. Even Mitchell, despite their history, had demonstrated the kind of intellectual curiosity and technical foundation that might make him valuable. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of intensive activity. Elena's new unit took shape, transforming from a collection of individual specialists into a cohesive team with shared purpose and methodology. The specialized equipment arrived. Cutting-edge signal analysis technology that existed at the intersection of military and intelligence community development, and Elena trained her team in its use with the practiced efficiency of someone who had mastered these tools years earlier. Mitchell surprised her. His work on the filtering algorithms exceeded expectations, demonstrating not just technical proficiency but genuine insight into the problem they were trying to solve. His initial algorithms detected patterns that even Elena had missed, identifying 3 potential enemy communication nodes hidden within civilian infrastructure. On the 15th day after the unit's formation, their methodical monitoring yielded the breakthrough they'd been working toward. Rivera, monitoring encrypted data traffic across civilian networks, detected a pattern of micro-disruptions consistent with their target's signature. Within hours, the team had traced the signal to its source, a seemingly ordinary commercial shipping facility located near a major port. "The pattern matches what we captured from the attack communications hub," Elena confirmed, studying the analysis results in the team's operations center. "But the scale is different. This isn't just coordinating a local attack. It's transmitting command and control protocols for something much larger." Colonel Blackwood reviewed the evidence, his expression grim. "Recommendations, Sergeant?" "We need eyes on that facility," Elena replied immediately. "Standard surveillance won't work. If they detect conventional military observation, they'll simply relocate. We need a specialized team, familiar with their communication methods, able to gather intelligence without alerting them." Blackwood nodded slowly. "You're proposing a field operation?" "Yes, sir. Myself and 3 team members posing as civilian contractors. We infiltrate the facility, identify the communications equipment, and plant monitoring devices that will give us access to their entire command network." The colonel studied her for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential intelligence value. "This goes beyond your original mandate, Diaz. Your unit was established for monitoring and analysis, not field operations." "With respect, sir, that artificial distinction is exactly what the enemy is exploiting," Elena countered. "They operate across conventional boundaries, military and civilian, digital and physical, intelligence and operations. If we're going to counter them effectively, we need to do the same." Blackwood glanced at Major Hawkins, who nodded slight agreement with Elena's assessment. "Very well," the colonel decided. "Plan the operation. But I want a comprehensive risk assessment and extraction protocol before I give final approval." As the colonel departed, Elena turned to her team. "Rivera, Mitchell, Cortez, you're with me on this. We'll need civilian cover identities, appropriate equipment, and a thorough understanding of the facility layout. Let's get to work." The next 72 hours were consumed with preparation. Elena drove her team relentlessly, demanding the same level of excellence she expected from herself. They analyzed satellite imagery, developed cover identities as communications equipment maintenance contractors, and practiced the specialized techniques required to identify and access the enemy's command systems without detection. Throughout the intense preparation, Elena observed a transformation in Mitchell that went beyond professional competence. The man who had once mocked her tattoo now studied it with genuine curiosity during rare moments of downtime. "The lightning bolts," he said during one such moment, nodding toward the design on her wrist. "They're not just decorative, are they? They represent something specific about your unit's capabilities." Elena considered him thoughtfully before responding. "They represent our ability to not just monitor signals, but to manipulate them when necessary. To redirect, disrupt, or mimic enemy communications." She rolled down her sleeve, covering the tattoo. "Not just listening to the enemy's conversation, but occasionally joining it while pretending to be them." Mitchell's eyes widened slightly at the implications. "That's well beyond conventional signals intelligence." "Which is why conventional signals intelligence keeps failing against this enemy," Elena replied. "They've evolved, so we evolved first. Now we're going to use that evolution against them." On the morning of the operation, Elena gathered her team for a final briefing. They would enter the facility under their civilian cover, conduct a standard maintenance inspection of the communications infrastructure, and use that access to plant specialized monitoring devices that would allow them to intercept the enemy's command network without detection. Remember, Elena emphasized, our objective is intelligence gathering, not confrontation. If we're compromised, we abort immediately. The value is in what we learn, not what we destroy. As they prepared to depart, Colonel Blackwood approached Elena privately. This operation goes well beyond what anyone expected when you were assigned here, Diaz, he said quietly. You were supposed to be monitoring for potential threats, not leading field operations against enemy communication hubs. Elena met his gaze steadily. When I accepted this assignment, sir, I understood it might evolve beyond its original parameters. The enemy doesn't respect our organizational boundaries or operational limitations. Neither can we, if we want to stay ahead of them. Blackwood studied her with newfound respect. You never were just a mailroom clerk, were you? Not even as a cover identity. No, sir, Elena acknowledged. I was always what this tattoo represents. Someone trained to see patterns others miss and to act on what I find. She adjusted her civilian attire, the communications tower symbol momentarily visible on her wrist. The mailroom was just where I needed to be to observe the right data flows. Well, Blackwood said, extending his hand. Good hunting, Sergeant. Bring your team back safely, and bring us the intelligence we need to finish this. As Elena joined her team for departure, she caught Mitchell watching her with an expression that mixed professional respect with something more personal, perhaps understanding, perhaps regret for his earlier misjudgment. Whatever it was, it reflected the distance they had traveled from mockery to mutual respect in a remarkably short time. Ready for this? She asked him as they boarded the unmarked vehicle that would transport them to the target facility. Mitchell nodded, his expression serious but determined. Ready to see what you saw all along, Sergeant, the patterns hidden in plain sight that others miss. He glanced at her wrist, where the communications tower tattoo was now concealed beneath civilian clothes. And maybe earn my own version of that someday. Elena allowed herself a small smile as the vehicle pulled away from Fob Garrison, carrying them toward an operation that would test everything she had built over the past 2 weeks. The communication tower tattoo that had once made her a target for jokes was now a symbol of aspiration for the very people who had mocked it. Sometimes, she reflected, the most powerful response to underestimation wasn't anger or revenge, but simply the quiet excellence that forced others to re-evaluate their assumptions. As their vehicle merged into civilian traffic, Elena felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything she had experienced during her months of anonymous service. The mission ahead was dangerous, and the outcome uncertain, but for the first time since arriving at Fob Garrison, she was operating not from the shadows of a cover identity, but from the strength of her true capabilities, leading a team that understood and valued the very skills that had once made her a target for mockery. And that, Elena decided as they approached their destination, was a transformation worth all the challenges it had required. From invisible to essential, from mocked to respected, from solitary observer to leader of an elite team united by shared purpose and mutual recognition of each other's unique value. The commercial shipping facility loomed before them, a sprawling complex of warehouses and loading docks, buzzing with the activity of a legitimate business. Trucks moved in and out of the gates. Workers in safety vests directed traffic, and security personnel conducted routine checks with the casual efficiency of people who expected nothing unusual. The perfect cover for something far more sinister. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena adjusted her ID badge, the fake credentials identifying her as Ana Santos from Regional Communications Maintenance. Beside her, Mitchell, Rivera, and Cortez completed their final equipment checks, each carrying specialized tools disguised as standard communications testing gear. Remember your roles? Elena said quietly as their unmarked van approached the security checkpoint. We're here to perform scheduled maintenance on their satellite uplink systems. Rivera, you're the lead technician. Mitchell and Cortez, your support. I'm the supervisor overseeing the work. The security guard at the gate checked their work order and IDs with cursory attention, his eyes sliding past the details that would have revealed discrepancies if examined closely. Elena maintained a pleasant, professional smile, embodying the slight boredom of someone performing routine work. After a brief radio confirmation with someone inside, the guard waved them through. "First hurdle cleared," Cortez murmured as they drove toward the main administrative building. "Don't get comfortable," Elena cautioned. "Getting in was always going to be the easy part. Finding what we're looking for without alerting them, that's where it gets complicated." A facility manager met them in the lobby, a thin man with nervous eyes who introduced himself as Larson. "We weren't expecting maintenance today," he said, checking their paperwork with more attention than the gate guard had shown. "Scheduled upgrade to your satellite communication systems," Rivera explained smoothly, adopting the slightly condescending tone of a technical specialist speaking to someone less knowledgeable. "The notification would have gone to your IT department, not facility management." Larson frowned, clearly displeased at being bypassed. "I should confirm this with our head office." "Of course," Elena interjected with professional courtesy, "though they'll just tell you what's in our work order. The upgrade is mandated by the Communications Regulatory Commission. All commercial facilities in this region are receiving the same modifications to prevent signal interference with the new emergency services network." She handed him an official-looking document that detailed the fictional regulatory requirement, complete with government seals and authorization codes that would seem legitimate under normal scrutiny. It was the kind of bureaucratic paperwork that most people skimmed rather than read closely, especially when presented by confident professionals who acted as if everything was routine. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Larson hesitated, then handed the paperwork back with a resigned nod. "Fine, but I'll need to accompany you to the communications room." "Of course," Elena agreed pleasantly. "We appreciate your cooperation." As they followed Larson through the facility, Elena observed everything with the trained eye of someone who had conducted dozens of similar operations. The building layout matched their intelligence, but she noted additional security features not visible in satellite imagery: extra cameras in key corridors, badge readers on doors that should have been standard access, security personnel stationed at junctions that had no obvious strategic value. "They're protecting something here beyond normal commercial interests," she thought, exchanging a subtle glance with Mitchell that told her he'd noticed the same anomalies. The communications room, when they reached it, appeared entirely conventional: standard commercial satellite uplink equipment, network servers, and telecommunications infrastructure. Nothing that immediately suggested military-grade communications or command systems. "We'll need about 2 hours," Elena told Larson. "Standard procedure is to test the current configuration before implementing any changes." "I'll need to stay and observe," Larson insisted, his nervous energy manifesting in constant small movements, checking his watch, adjusting his tie, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "That's fine," Elena replied with practiced ease. "Though I should warn you, most of this is rather technical and tedious. Rivera will be running diagnostic sequences that take considerable time." Rivera immediately moved to the main communications panel and began a convincing performance of standard system diagnostics, her fingers flying across keyboards and connecting testing equipment that was actually scanning for hidden transmissions and unauthorized frequencies. While Rivera commanded Larson's attention with her technical work, Elena, Mitchell, and Cortez dispersed throughout the room, each focusing on different aspects of the communications infrastructure. Their equipment, disguised as standard testing devices, was actually conducting deep signal analysis, looking for the specific pattern of micro-disruptions that had led them to this facility. 40 minutes into their maintenance, Mitchell caught Elena's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward a server rack in the corner of the room. The specialized scanner in his hand had detected something, emissions that didn't match the ostensible purpose of the equipment. Elena casually moved closer, positioning herself to see the server rack while maintaining the pretense of supervising the overall work. Her own scanner confirmed Mitchell's finding. The rack was emitting signals on frequencies that weren't standard for commercial communications, using the same pattern of micro-disruptions they had detected from their base. "Mr. Larson," she said, turning to the facility manager who was still hovering near Rivera, "we've identified some signal degradation in your main uplink. It might be causing the interference issues reported in this sector." Larson frowned. "We haven't experienced any interference." It might not be noticeable in your day-to-day operations, Elena explained smoothly, but it's affecting emergency services communications in the area. That's why the Regulatory Commission mandated these upgrades. She gestured for Rivera to show Larson something on her testing equipment, a convincing visualization of signal interference that Rivera had prepared in advance. While Larson was distracted, Elena gave Mitchell and Cortez a subtle hand signal, indicating they should proceed with the next phase of their operation. With practiced efficiency, Mitchell moved to the suspicious server rack and began what appeared to be routine maintenance. In reality, he was placing a specialized monitoring device, no larger than a thumbnail, that would allow them to intercept and decode the communications passing through the equipment. Cortez, meanwhile, was conducting a thorough scan of the room's physical infrastructure, looking for additional hidden equipment or security measures that might detect their intrusion. His expression remained professionally neutral, but Elena caught the slight tension in his posture that indicated he'd found something concerning. "Miss Santos," Cortez called, using Elena's cover name. "Could you take a look at this, please? I'm seeing some unusual power fluctuations." Elena joined him at a junction box near the rear of the room. "What have you found?" she asked quietly. "Secondary security system," Cortez murmured, his voice barely audible. "Not connected to the main building network. Independent monitoring with its own power supply." Elena's pulse quickened slightly. This was unexpected, a level of security beyond what would be normal for a commercial facility, even one handling sensitive data. "Can you bypass it?" "Not without triggering an alert," Cortez replied. "It's watching everything in this room, including our maintenance activities." Elena processed this information rapidly, assessing the implications. If the system was actively monitoring them, their cover might already be compromised. But if they aborted now, they'd lose the opportunity to gather the critical intelligence they'd come for. "Continue as planned," she decided, "but accelerate the timeline." "Mitchell, how much longer?" Quote, "2 minutes to complete installation," Mitchell responded, his voice steady despite the increased pressure. "Device is syncing with the target system now." Elena returned to Larson, who was still examining the interference pattern Rivera had shown him. "Mr. Larson, I'm afraid the issues are more extensive than we initially thought. We're detecting power fluctuations that could indicate a more serious problem with your communications infrastructure." Larson's nervous energy intensified. "What kind of problem?" "Potentially a fire hazard," Elena improvised, creating a plausible concern that would justify their accelerated activities. "We'll need to complete our diagnostics quickly and determine whether the system needs to be temporarily powered down for safety." As she spoke, Elena noticed a subtle change in the facility manager's demeanor, a shift from nervous to suspicious, his eyes darting to the security cameras in the corners of the room. Something had alerted him, or perhaps their cover story wasn't as convincing as she'd hoped. "I should consult with our security director," Larson said, reaching for the phone on the wall. Before he could complete the call, the door to the communications room burst open. 4 men in security uniforms entered, their hands hovering near concealed weapons, their expressions leaving no doubt that the team's cover was blown. "Step away from the equipment," ordered the lead security officer, his voice hard with authority. "All of you, hands where we can see them." Elena complied immediately, signaling her team to do the same. This was the scenario they had prepared for: discovery before mission completion. Their extraction protocol was clear: no resistance, no confrontation, maintain cover identity as long as possible to protect the broader operation. "There seems to be some misunderstanding," Elena said calmly, adopting the confused indignation of someone unjustly accused. "We're here on authorized maintenance." "Save it," the security leader cut her off. "We know you're not from the communications company. The real maintenance team arrived at the gate 5 minutes ago." Elena maintained her confused expression while her mind raced through options. The monitoring device Mitchell had planted was installed but needed another 60 seconds to fully synchronize with the target system and begin transmission. If they were removed from the room now, the mission would be only partially successful. "There must be some scheduling error," Rivera attempted, maintaining their cover. "We have authorized work orders. You'll remain here until local authorities arrive," the security leader stated flatly. "In the meantime, we'll need to confiscate your equipment for inspection." Elena caught Mitchell's eye, reading the subtle signal in his expression. The monitoring device was still synchronizing, not yet active. They needed more time. "Of course." Elena agreed, feigning cooperative confusion. "But I should warn you that disconnecting our diagnostic equipment during an active scan could damage your communications systems. At least let us complete the current diagnostic cycle." The security leader hesitated, and in that moment of uncertainty, Elena made her move, not toward the guards or the exit, but toward the fire alarm on the wall beside her. Before anyone could stop her, she pulled the alarm. Immediately, ear-splitting sirens filled the building, and automatic protocols triggered throughout the facility. Overhead sprinklers activated, drenching everyone in the room and creating instant chaos. "Standard evacuation protocols," Elena shouted over the noise to her team. "Everyone out!" In the confusion of water, alarms, and emergency lights, the security team's focus momentarily fractured. They were still trying to maintain control of Elena's team while following facility emergency procedures, a split second of divided attention that Elena had been counting on. "The equipment!" Larson shouted to the security team. "Don't let them take anything." But in the chaos, Mitchell had managed to complete the final synchronization sequence. The monitoring device was now active, hidden within the server rack, transmitting its data back to their base through encrypted channels disguised as routine network traffic. "Move to extraction point." Elena ordered her team as they were herded toward the exit, along with all other personnel evacuating the building. In the crowded hallways filled with confused employees rushing toward emergency exits, maintaining direct control of 4 specific individuals became increasingly difficult for the security team. By the time they reached the main lobby, Elena had maneuvered her team into position near one of the side exits. When a group of actual maintenance workers created a momentary obstruction, Elena gave the signal. Her team slipped away from their escorts, blending into the crowd of evacuating employees and emerging from different exits than the ones they were being directed toward. The prearranged extraction vehicle, different from the one they had arrived in, was waiting 2 blocks away. Within minutes, they were driving away from the facility, their mission technically successful despite the compromise of their cover identities. "Devices transmitting," Mitchell confirmed, checking the secure receiver that monitored their planted equipment. "We're getting full data capture from their communications system." "They'll find it," Cortez pointed out. "Now that they know the facility was infiltrated, they'll sweep everything." "They'll find it eventually," Elena agreed. "But the device is designed to look like a standard component of the server rack. It'll take time for them to locate it, and by then we'll have the intelligence we need." Rivera studied Elena with newfound respect. The fire alarm was brilliant. Simple, but effective. "Sometimes the best solutions are the most straightforward," Elena replied. "They were expecting us to either surrender or attempt to fight our way out. They weren't prepared for us to use their own safety protocols against them." As their vehicle merged onto the highway, heading back toward Phoebe Garrison, Elena felt a complex mix of emotions. The mission had been compromised earlier than anticipated, forcing an improvisational extraction, but they had achieved their primary objective. The monitoring device was installed and transmitting. More importantly, they had confirmed what Elena had suspected. The commercial shipping facility was indeed housing sophisticated military-grade communications equipment disguised as standard business infrastructure. The enemy was using civilian operations as cover for their command and control network, hiding in plain sight among legitimate commercial activities. "What happens now?" Mitchell asked as they approached the base perimeter. "Now we analyze whatever data we can capture before they discover our device," Elena replied. "And we prepare for the next phase, because this was just one node in their network. There will be others." Back at Phoebe Garrison, Colonel Blackwood was waiting for them in the operations center, his expression a mixture of concern and relief as they entered. "Report, Sergeant," he ordered, dispensing with formalities. Elena briefed him on the mission, the initial infiltration, the discovery of military-grade communications equipment within the commercial facility, the compromise of their cover, and the successful planting of the monitoring device despite their detection. "So they know they were compromised," Blackwood summarized, "but not exactly what we were after or what we managed to accomplish." "Correct, sir," Elena confirmed. "They'll eventually find our device, but by then we should have captured enough data to identify other nodes in their network." Blackwood nodded thoughtfully. "Good work, Sergeant. Not textbook, but effective." He turned to address the entire team. "All of you performed admirably under pressure. This intelligence may well prevent a major attack." As the colonel departed to brief higher command, Elena gathered her team around the central monitoring station, where data from their planted device was already flowing in. "Let's make the most of whatever time we have before they find our little gift," she said, her focus shifting to the technical analysis that would extract meaning from the intercepted communications. For the next 72 hours, Elena's unit worked relentlessly, analyzing the data stream from the compromised facility. Sleep was minimal, meals were consumed at workstations, and the intense focus never wavered. What they discovered confirmed Elena's worst fears. The communications network they had penetrated was coordinating a sophisticated attack plan targeting multiple civilian and military objectives simultaneously. "It's scheduled to begin in 4 days," Elena explained during the emergency briefing with Colonel Blackwood and representatives from Central Command who had arrived overnight. "The shipping facility we infiltrated is just one node in a distributed command network. There are 7 others, each disguised within legitimate civilian operations." Quote, she displayed the network map they had constructed, showing how the enemy had built their command infrastructure using civilian cover: a shipping facility, a telecommunications company, a data center, a television broadcast station, and 3 other commercial operations spread across the region. By distributing their command functions across multiple civilian facilities, they've made it nearly impossible for conventional military intelligence to detect the overall pattern, Elena continued. "Each individual node appears innocent when observed in isolation. It's only when you see how they're interconnected that the true purpose becomes clear." General Richards, the Central Command representative, studied the display with growing concern. "This is beyond anything we've encountered before," he admitted. "Using civilian infrastructure as cover for military operations at this scale. The implications are disturbing. More disturbing is what happens if we don't neutralize this network before the attack is launched," Elena replied, bringing up the projected casualty figures based on their intelligence. "Thousands of civilian casualties, critical infrastructure destroyed, and military response capabilities severely degraded." "What's your recommendation, Sergeant?" Richards asked, his tone making it clear that despite her relatively junior rank, her expertise in this domain was recognized and valued. Elena didn't hesitate. "Simultaneous neutralization of all identified nodes, sir, not destruction. That would mean attacking civilian facilities, but targeted electronic warfare to disable their command capabilities without physical damage. Can that be done?" Blackwood asked. "Yes, sir. My unit has developed a countermeasure based on the communications protocols we've identified. A precisely targeted electromagnetic pulse that will disable their command systems without affecting surrounding civilian infrastructure." Richards exchanged glances with Blackwood, both men clearly weighing the unprecedented nature of the operation against the consequences of inaction. "The coordination required for simultaneous action against 7 targets is substantial," Richards noted. "Which is why we need to deploy immediately," Elena responded. "My team has already prepared the necessary equipment and operational plans. We have 72 hours before the enemy attack is launched. We need to move now." What followed was the most intensive operation of Elena's career. Her unit was expanded with additional personnel from Central Command, and 7 strike teams were formed, each led by a member of her original team and equipped with the specialized countermeasures they had developed. Elena coordinated the overall operation from a mobile command center, directing the simultaneous infiltration of all 7 remaining nodes in the enemy network. This time, there was no attempt at maintaining cover identities or creating plausible pretexts. The teams moved with the direct authority of military command, supported by local law enforcement who secured the perimeters of the targeted facilities. The neutralization itself was anticlimactic, precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses that rendered the enemy's command equipment inoperable without damaging surrounding systems or infrastructure. Civilian employees of the compromised facilities were evacuated safely, many unaware that their workplaces had been used as cover for military operations. In the aftermath, as Elena's team gathered in their operations center to assess the results, the atmosphere was one of exhausted triumph. The enemy attack had been prevented, their command network completely disabled, and subsequent raids had captured key personnel who had been operating within the civilian facilities. "The intelligence you gathered was flawless," Colonel Blackwood told Elena as they reviewed the final reports. "Central Command is calling this the most significant counterterrorism operation of the decade." Elena nodded acknowledgement, but her mind was already moving forward, analyzing the implications of what they had discovered. "The enemy will adapt," she said quietly. "They'll develop new methods, find new ways to hide their operations within civilian domains. And we'll be ready for them, Blackwood replied with confidence. Because of the unit you've built here. People trained to see what others miss, to find patterns in chaos. Later that evening, as Elena stood alone in her office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 8 months earlier, she had arrived at FOB Garrison as a supposed mailroom clerk, enduring mockery and dismissal while quietly performing her real mission. Now she commanded a specialized unit that had just prevented a major attack and potentially saved thousands of lives. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Mitchell stood in the doorway, his expression reflective. "Got a minute, Sergeant?" Elena gestured him inside. "What's on your mind, Mitchell?" He seemed to struggle with his words for a moment, then simply rolled up his sleeve to reveal a fresh tattoo on his forearm, a simplified version of the communications tower symbol that had once been the subject of his mockery. "The unit insignia," he explained, seeing her surprised expression. "Central Command officially designated us as SIGINT Special Operations Group, Detachment Charlie. They authorized the symbol as our official designation." Elena studied the tattoo, similar to her own, but with subtle differences, that marked it as specifically belonging to the unit she had created. "Bold choice," she observed, "especially given your history with my ink." Mitchell nodded, acknowledging the irony. "That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. I owe you an apology. A real one, not just the awkward attempt I made when I first learned who you really were." Elena leaned against her desk, curious to hear what he had to say. "When I mocked your tattoo, it wasn't really about the ink," Mitchell admitted. "It was about feeling superior, about putting someone else down to make myself feel more important. I targeted you because you were quiet, because you kept to yourself, because you seemed like an easy mark." He glanced down at his new tattoo, then back at Elena. "I never considered that your silence might be strength, that you might be keeping to yourself because you were carrying responsibilities I couldn't imagine. I judged you based on appearances, and I was completely, embarrassingly wrong." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Elena found herself nodding slowly. "Appearances are often misleading," she said. "That's a fundamental truth in our line of work. The most dangerous threats are the ones that don't look threatening until it's too late." "Like a quiet mailroom clerk with a butterfly tattoo," Mitchell said with a rueful smile. "Or a communications tower," Elena corrected, gesturing to her wrist where the symbol that had once made her a target for jokes was now recognized as a mark of elite capability. Mitchell straightened, his expression becoming more formal. "The team wanted me to invite you to the mess hall. They're having an unofficial celebration of our first successful operation as an official unit. Even Colonel Blackwood might make an appearance." Elena considered the invitation. Throughout her career, she had maintained professional distance, focusing on the mission rather than social connections. But the unit she had built here was different, forged through shared challenges and mutual respect that had been earned rather than assumed. "I'll be there," she decided. After all, a commander should know her team beyond just their technical capabilities. As Mitchell left, Elena glanced once more at the communications tower tattoo on her wrist. The symbol that had once marked her as different, that had drawn mockery from those who didn't understand its significance. Now it was the emblem of an elite unit, a source of pride rather than derision. The journey from invisible to essential hadn't been easy. It had required patience through months of underestimation, confidence in her own capabilities when others saw only limitations, and the courage to step into the light when the moment demanded it. But the result? Lives saved, threats neutralized, and a new unit built on mutual respect and shared purpose had been worth every moment of that journey. As Elena joined her team in the mess hall, accepting the quiet congratulations of soldiers who had once barely noticed her presence, she reflected on the power of perception, how quickly it could shift, how completely it could transform, and how little it often had to do with reality. The communications tower tattoo had never changed, but how people saw it, and her, had undergone a transformation as profound as it was meaningful. In the end, true capability couldn't remain hidden forever. Like signals emerging from background noise, patterns forming from apparent chaos, the truth eventually revealed itself to those with the wisdom to recognize it and the courage to acknowledge when they had been wrong. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.